the 6th of September. Welcome if you just joined us as a viewer, and if you're joining us in the chat. And as always, welcome to my co-hosts, Thunderous and Stop Spamming. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. They've had a good week. And
no, we haven't. I fell off the goddamn bicycle. I mean, this is supposed to happen when you're like 60 or 70. I mean, I'm fucking 56 and I fell off the goddamn bicycle. I can't believe it. I could, like a truck came out. I had to stop. Couldn't see where I was putting my foot. Got half my foot into a pothole, and then everything happened in slow motion. Yes, as my hip is hurting. Hey, nah.
Well, we must speak again afterwards, Stops. I thought you were older than 56. I thought you were older than 56.
Oh shit! Did I give it away now? What did I say?
You said 56.
No, I'm saying no. Sorry, I'm how much do I usually say? 78 or what? 82? I don't know.
Yeah, whatever number comes to mind.
Sorry, I'm 82. Yeah.
Well, after reading the Quran last week, Stops, it's probably the will of Allah. It was scripted that you would fall down a hole and die. That was the intention, but it wasn't your time to die.
Does it mean I had half my foot in hell now?
Well, it depends how long your trousers were, because if your trousers are below your ankles, that part of your foot is going to go in hell. If your trousers
I heard about that. That's so funny.
Now, guys, just remind me what verse we're on.
Chapter 161, I believe it was, or 162. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think it's 162 is where we're starting.
So is one who pursues. Do you have this?
Yeah, that's it. Cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
I just want to have a quick thingamajig, because this comes along again and again and again. No, sorry, I have to do the intro. Yes, I tell you, I did not hit my head. I just hit my hip, and it's sore as hell.
maybe it's gone throughout the body.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. It's Friday as usual, and it's the 6th of September. First time this year, by the way. And we talk about Islam. We don't talk about anything else. We address the ideology. We address the bad ideas. We don't care if a Muslim wants to believe there's a God. If a Muslim wants to do that, I don't have a single problem in the world with this. It's up to the person whether or not they need a God to get through life. So I don't care about that. I just care about the consequences. In other words, the bad ideas inside the ideology. So if a Muslim comes here and says, well, I've got a good reason to believe that a God exists, that's cool. I don't care. But if you lie and deceive, and if you're willfully ignorant, we're going to call you out. That's how easy it is, okay? So we don't attack anyone. We don't attack Islam as such. We use facts, reality, and reasoning to critique the bad ideas in Islam. And that is what we're trying to do. Now, if anybody wants to join us, they're free to do so. There's no censorship here. We believe in free speech. So however you want to, like give your opinion, that's cool. If you get abusive, okay, you're going to get kicked, of course. But if you just want to talk to us, you want to correct us, you want to comment on something, go ahead. If you want to watch live, go ahead, go to the YouTube channel. We interact with people there all the time. So brilliant. If you want to comment later on, we do read comments on the videos and we do try and react to them. So if you have a comment later on, you can always leave it at the bottom of the video. Okay, because you have 3 different options of interacting with us. One is to watch the live show and go and chat and just type something that you want us to know or to react to other people. You can either go and come on the panel here, or you can watch the archive version on YouTube. So that is it. We are, I think, the only English-speaking active, interactive channel or show that only deals with Islam. We have the what is it called again? The Live Jihad Watch? I can't remember. I feel an idiot now. They sometimes have guests, but as far as I'm concerned, we're the only ones who go live on these things. Now, I'm not shy to have anything positive about Islam. And if I do find something, I will mention it and I will say, this is good. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm not only about negativity. I'm just about honesty, integrity, and authenticity. Now, people come all the time and say, well, we can't help it because we are Muslims. And they are commenting as though they are gay, like being gay or being homosexual, lesbian or whatever is the same thing as being a Muslim. And that is very, very wrong. Okay, I'm sorry. That is not the way that it works. If you are a Muslim, you have been indoctrinated. So I agree that a lot of times it's not your fault. If you are a Muslim and you can't think critically, you don't have this ability. I agree that this is not always your fault. But there is no such thing like Fitrah. Like people come to me again and again. They say, yeah, but Justin Barrett and Petrovich and all these people, they came and they did all these studies and all these experiments. No, they did not. There is not a single experiment, not a single study, not a single paper that they have ever brought out. Quite the opposite. We have papers which are called, and I wrote them down, Judgments about Fact and Fiction by Children from Religious and Non-Religious Backgrounds. We have religious children struggle to separate fact from fiction. Religious children are meaner than their secular counterparts. Judgments about fact and fiction by children from religious and non-religious backgrounds. Now, there are some studies here which actually show the opposite of what the claim is. Because the claim is that as a child, you don't need to do anything, you will automatically end up with a God. And the opposite is the case. And this is where we have real studies, real experiments, real papers, which get checked and get confirmed over and over. And these are real. The other ones, there's nothing, like I said, there's not a single one by Barrett or by Petrovich. So I'm really, sick and tired of hearing this Fitrah thing that has been proven, demonstrated, shown, and everything. No, it has not. And if anybody tells you the opposite, just tell them that there are studies about fact and fiction by children, and you can look at this paper and take it apart, look at the data. This is real. And then ask the people, okay, give me a single paper by Justin Barrett. And they will not be able to present one. So all they're doing is claims. So that is my pet peeve of the week that I came across last week.
Yeah, I mean, these claims are just repeated. I heard the Quranic one again, the Quranic science. I sent you a link with Nadir Ahmed debating Aaron Ra and his buddy.
And I told Aaron, listen, why can't we sit down? And he just, I don't know, he didn't. And I said to him, why are you doing it this way around? I mean, he just went through the list by, apostate prophet. But why not do it the other way around? You had Nadir Ahmed on the show, then ask him to give you something that is a scientific miracle and show him, or let him show you that he's correct. Instead of arguing, because if you make this is the problem. A lot of people then say, "Well, I can show you a mistake."
I've set you off on this, haven't I?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, I just want to show people. I just want to help people, because what they're doing is they're saying, "Well, this is what the Quran says, and this is wrong." Now, if you do it that way around, that gives the opponent, the Muslim, a huge amount of wiggle room, because they're going to then go on the semantics and say, "Well, the Quran doesn't say that." Blah blah blah. That's why you need to turn it around. You need to go and tell the person opposite, say, well, show me what it says in the Quran, because then you can nail him down on the specifics. And that's what we need to do. So we need to learn from the mistakes that others make.
Yeah, I mean, it's just peddling the same old stuff with embryology and all the rest of it. And they had an Arabic speaker with him on there. I should find the video. Once we get into this, I'll see if I can find the video. And it was the same old, right? He tries to control the conversation. This is this Nadir Ahmed, and just ignores whatever evidence comes up. So not an honest interlocutor, or if he is honest, he's the most ignorant I've come across. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
Every time you watch a debate about Islamic science and the Quran, it's a different face, but it's the same verbatim, it's the same jargon, it's the same salutations, it's the same verbatim. It's just words that are rearranged the same. The mentality is the same, the attitude is the same, the disposition is the same. You'd be better off having a conversation with one of the Borg, than you are with. In fact, it is the same. The Borg and Islam are basically the same. It's a bit like when I've listened to Nadir Ahmed several times debates, and to be honest, I'm finding it hard to believe that this guy comes on YouTube and enters debates. I'd rather watch baby seals get clubbed. In all honesty, I think it's probably more humane to watch a baby seal get clubbed than to watch a Muslim talk about Islamic and Quranic science and watch them get beaten over the head, but still reappear finding somebody else to have the debate with. At what point do these debaters and this Islamic science and the audience think, you know what, enough of this already? It has been disproven so many times. It's just pseudoscientific claptrap. I mean, for crying out loud, enough already.
Yeah, well, obviously,
it looks like they're all working from the same script.
Exactly.
There's somebody in the script in the chat, Tony, which is quite interesting. I married a Muslim man, have no idea what our children will be taught. I have yet found anything that addresses my situation. Now, number one, there are different options available to you. Number one, you can go to an ex-Muslim board, like CMB, the British one. There are people addressing exactly these kind of questions on even on YouTube, because there are a lot of people who have been in this situation and who can give you tips and tricks and show you things. Because if we go into this, you're just going to get the same old. Just wait with your children before you teach them anything about gods. Wait until they're a little bit older so you can teach them about all of them instead of indoctrinating them. But it's true that if you marry a Muslim man, it can be a bit daunting. But that's it. So there's no one solution for everybody, but there are different options available to you.
I think the land that you reside in can determine what influence that you have on your own children. Living in say an Islamic land, I'm sorry to say, but you've got no chance. But if you're living in a land where Islam politically is gaining traction, I think you have to be as cautious as you possibly can in how you approach the matter. A technique that possibly I would use, only as a suggestion, is whatever your husband is saying by way of teaching about Islam, is maybe to find a counter argument and maybe have a discussion with your children when he's not around as to why you personally don't accept it, or here's an example of why that argument or what the suggestion or what the doctrine is of Islam your husband's proposing to the children, why it doesn't make sense. Maybe just something on the side, being discreet about it, could be another option. Because as an ex-Muslim myself, when I was growing up, I would look at things on the side myself. I didn't have anyone to encourage me. I did it myself, but maybe that is also something you can encourage and inculcate in your children, to be a bit more critical, and they'll derive a lot of pleasure out of that as well. I don't know what age your children are, but if your husband is teaching them, I'm going to assume that they've got to be around about 10 years old and above, really, to start understanding it, start inculcating it, and maybe that'd be a good time for you to do a counter argument on the side, as a suggestion.
Yeah, indeed. And
can I just say as well, just on top of that, don't underestimate that if you're feeding something to your children on the side, that it doesn't go inside their heart or it doesn't lodge within them. I remember an illustration once being used, a bit like yeast. You put it in the bread, you don't see it disappear, you see it disappear, but the effects of yeast come later when you take the cake out of the oven or the bread out of the oven, so to speak. And it's the same thing with children. You can sow something in their heart. If it's logical and it's truthful and it's critical, it may not manifest itself straight away. It might come out later. So don't underestimate the influence that you have if you're teaching truth.
Yeah, well said. And just to reiterate, if any Muslims wanting to join the show, please message us in the live chat, starting with @JananTonicShow. That way we will be able to see your comment. So if you're a Muslim and you are listening to us read through the Quran and you want to provide your perspective, then type in @TheJananTonicShow and the message, hey, I'd like to join, or whatever the case is, and we'll see if we can work something out. We may well have a Muslim joining us again this week. We'll see. I've messaged him, so we'll see whether he joins us shortly.
Just as a trailer, I'm going to make a trailer later, but next week we're going to be joined by an ex-Muslim lady who's going to give us her perspective. She's quite keen to join her thoughts, and she's going to bring a different opinion, different perspective on the Gin and Tonic show next week.
Yeah, and Simon is just saying there, how does everyone think Ali Dawa's doing with his salam stand? He has even learned some Arabic. Yeah, well, mostly he's putting this stand up there. And Armin Navabi, who's an ex-Muslim as well, challenged him. He challenged Adnan Rashid, although that doesn't seem to be much of a discussion. But it's like somebody that's hardly knows anything that's putting up a big stand and sounding, like they know something. Ali's Dawa's level, as we've spoken many times, is beyond low. Ali was selling kebabs last week, somebody saying in the chat there. So yes, I mean, they're just going to, rehash and babble the same nonsense they have done many times before. You're not going to hear anything new there. And presumably the stand is not for any of us. Any of us went there, or Bob the Builder, or anybody else that's a regular there, Steve, Atheist Corner, or whoever it might be. It's not them, right? They're looking for the innocent, for the, in a sense, possibly the gullible, or at least the uninformed, so that they can, get this stuff. Because anybody that just wanders past there is not really going to have a grasp of the Quran or these arguments or whatever the case is. And they're quite slick with their scripts and the stuff that they have for those people who have not been engaged in this sort of thing. So for that, it might actually work, unfortunately. But that's just a sense of people not knowing anything, right? If I wandered past a physics stand and I didn't know much about physics, and somebody seemed to sound like they were a professor, they could fool me quite easily unless I went to look it up, or whatever the case is. If you sound confident and you've got a slick sounding script, then unfortunately these days you are liable to convince people, at least to some degree. So the answer to the question is not doing well from an intellectual point of view.
Don't you find that Speaker's Corner now is just a lot of shouting?
Yeah. A lot of it's shouting. I don't watch that much anymore. Occasionally I'll pop onto a live stream. For those who are interested, Mr. Rex TV does it almost every week. I actually said he should come onto the show here, or we could do a live stream with him at some point. But he's there every week. He's kind of a bit like content over everything, where he's not committed to one side or the other, just more kind of knows everybody, and which enables him to get into and stream from all over the show. So if you're interested, normally on a Sunday after 1 p.m. UK time, he's running around. I'll actually put it in here so that people can see it. I think it's spelled like this, Mr. Rex.
Because I remember last year when I had Ike run around and I had him ask, what's it, Ali Dawa, can you explain the first sentence in the Quran in 2.1? And he just ran away. He couldn't. He could not explain what the Quran said, and he simply left and dodged it. Like, he's not able to do anything when it comes to the Quran. He can only, he's got a big mouth making. And this is exactly what Robert's just saying. He just says things with confidence, and a lot of people believe him, which is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and it's not often that we will, suggest other channels. But like I say, I'm putting into the chat there. There's the channel to go and watch, to subscribe to if you want to watch a live stream. So if you've got a Sunday afternoon and you want to see it, obviously he'll just choose random people. So it might not always be the people you want to watch, but at least you can see some version of the live stream. So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Good. With that said, shall we get going here? Let us bring up the surah there. So we're starting at Surah 3:162, and I just want to see how many have we still got. Okay, so we've got a good 38 left to go, so probably a couple of shows left until we get to Surah 4. And oh my goodness, are we going to have some interesting discussions when it comes to Surah 4. You are a Muslim, and I would strongly suggest joining us for Surah 4. That's going to be an interesting one. But in the meantime,
I think the phrase is it's going to kick off when we get to Surah 4.
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to have an eerie silence. It's going to be crickets.
No, I think we are going to kick off. That is, the three of us will be kicking off when we get to chapter 4.
Oh, well, our critique is going to focus in even more than it has been. Indeed. All right, let's do 3162. Remember, again, if you're a Muslim and you want to join us, please let us know in the live stream. So here we go. Sahih International. So one who pursues the pleasure of Allah, like one who brings upon himself the anger of Allah, and whose refuge is hell, and wretched is the destination. Yusuf Ali. Is the man who follows the good pleasure of Allah like the man who draws on himself the wrath of Allah, and whose abode is in hell? A woeful refuge. Refuge? Well, obviously, they're not the same thing. It's almost like, to me, when the first reading, again, we have to read this maybe more than once, but sometimes to me it's like a tautology. It's like a trivial statement. Is the man who follows the good pleasure of Allah like the man who draws himself the wrath of Allah? Well, obviously not. So maybe this is just like a metaphorical, obviously not type of statement.
But you have to remember what you said several months ago, Rob. This is all poetry. So in your Arabic Qurayshi tongue, this has got a rhyme. So sometimes when we're reading the translation doesn't make sense, or sound like it's fitting well. But he's making words up to keep the flow of the rhyme going.
Yes, yeah. So maybe but again, a lot of Muslims take this seriously in the sense that there is something profound or interesting or useful being said in some of these verses, and I think we have to just say, like you say, these are just filling in the gaps.
I put two alternatives in there in the chat. Can the man who pursues God's pleasure be like the man who has brought God's wrath upon himself? The other one is one who pursues God's pleasure, the same as one who incurs wrath from God, his destiny is held. So those are more clear wording without what Thunderous quite rightly said, without this need to keep in the rhyme or something.
Okay, we've got, I think we've got Aziz joining us, so let's just check.
Yeah, the Arabic, it's quite funny how the Arabic rhymes, because you always have this R and the E, and that's it. It always seems to be the same two syllables.
So let me just check. The slave of Allah, master of man. Is that Aziz? Aziz, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Just make your mic, if you can, just raise the level of your mic a little bit if you're able to.
No problem. How does it sound now?
Yeah, we're there. That sounds a little bit better. Good evening to you. How are you tonight?
How does it sound now?
Yeah, we can hear you. You're coming through there. Hopefully the other guys can hear you. If you can't, then just raise your volume if you're a viewer at the moment.
Hi, Aziz.
Hello, everybody.
Right.
Hi, Aziz. I'm just checking if we can boost your level, but I don't see this anywhere.
No,
I hear Aziz perfectly, to be honest with you.
You can hear him okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing him perfectly, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's nothing to boost it here that I can see. I can just mute or unmute. There's no option yet. This is a growing platform. We have got an updated version here. So you'll be able to see what's going on in the chat there, as well as our private chat, so we can talk to each other. So where comments are, that's exactly what's happening on YouTube. And then in the private chat, we can talk to each other, and viewers won't see that. All right, so Aziz, we're on 3162. There's not a lot there. I'm going to move on to the next one, and then you can read along with us.
Okay.
Here we go. So Surah 3163, Sahih International. They are varying degrees in the sight of Allah, and Allah is seeing of whatever they do. Yusuf Ali. They are in varying gardens in the sight of Allah. Allah sees well what they do. So obviously you're just coming into it at the moment, and that sort of sentence just sort of hangs in midair. So let's just see. There are degrees of...
This is for the prophets.
Is that what it is? Have you got the other book there, Stops?
Because it says the prophet cannot take more of the spoils of war than he's entitled to. Okay, that was 161. And that is da-da-da. And then 162 is one who pursues God's pleasure, the same as one who incurs wrath from God. So for me, they're still talking about the prophets, unless they're now talking about the general Muslim.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead there.
It doesn't necessarily mean that one verse is related to the previous verse or the preceding verse always. It doesn't necessarily
sure.
mean that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
But we've got to try and find out what it does relate to here. I mean, if
No,
you were reading a
the
lot of these
habit I
things,
have is always going like 2 or 3 up, 2 or 3 down, just to see if there's any kind
yeah,
of
they are. That's
context here.
helpful. Yeah, you can see where it sort of fits in there. He says those who leave this. This is Ibn Abbas. This is the tafsir of 3163. Those who leave deceit have different ranks with Allah in paradise, but those who deceive will occupy different levels in hell. And Allah is seer of all that you do, whether it is deception or other things. Al Jalalain. No, there are degrees, that is, individuals of different degrees before God, that is, belonging to various stations. For those that follow his beatitude, a reward. For those who are laden with God's anger, punishment, and God sees all that they do. So this is also talking about, presumably, then this is also talking about that not everybody goes to, if I understand this correctly, and you guys can come in and comment here, that are there different levels in hell and different levels in heaven then, as opposed to one?
The heaven thing, there are clearly different heavens, because when Muhammad went on the winged horse to heaven, he spoke to different levels with each different prophets guarding the door of each level of heaven. However, in my experience, I've only ever heard of one hell, but with varying degrees of punishment in that one abode.
What's your understanding, Aziz?
My understanding about this verse, it seems like it's a Medina verse, because it seems like it's speaking to a group of Muhammad's followers. I got that idea from reading a few verses, like 10 verses past and 10 verses ahead of the current verse.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's speaking to the Muslims, and when the Muslims were coming into the fold of Islam or the guidance of Muhammad, many of them were bringing their belief systems, and so it seems like it's an answer to some of the new Muslims, and they had a belief that God may not be able to see everything. So this is a reply from the all-seeing God that no, in fact, He does see everything.
Yeah, Maududi is talking about this being an answer to the suspicion of the archers about the honesty of the Holy Prophet in regard to the division of spoils. When they saw the companions plunder the enemy, the archers feared that the former would get the whole of the spoil and they would be deprived of it at the time of division, just because they had not taken part in the plunder. This is why they spontaneously deserted their post. When later on they put forward some lame excuses, they were not accepted. Then the Holy Prophet said, the real thing is that you did not trust in me. You suspect that I would deal dishonestly with you and not give you the same share. So that's Maududi's sort of take on this.
That's for the Battle of Uhud, right? That's for the Battle of Uhud?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Is that the direct tasfir from his opinion for 3:6 for 3?
Yeah, that's 161 to 164. That was Maududi. But the other Ibn Abbas, Jalalain, Kashani, etc. They normally do verse by verse, so they're literally talking about one verse. Ibn Kathir and seems like Maududi will take a number of verses together and then try and give an explanation of, say, 3, 4, or 5 verses.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, when I read that without reading the tasfir, the first thing that strikes me is it comes like a rebuttal when I'm reading the verse without the tasfir. There are varying degrees in Allah's sight, especially when you hear it in Arabic. To me, when I hear it in Arabic, it sounds like a rebuttal to me. So if there was accusations that Prophet Muhammad wasn't being fair with the spoils of war, then it's interesting that this would be considered a rebuttal, because it's almost like, where is your evidence to accuse the Prophet? The only person who has knowledge of the unseen is God. So, it seems like a rebuttal to me to those who accuse.
if it's a rebuttal, then why is this rebuttal in a book which is for all time? I mean, whichever direction you go in as far as time concerned, forward or backward, the Quran is eternal. So why would this ayah be in the Quran? Surely this is a matter to be discussed in the Hadith and nothing to do with the Quran.
Well, Hadith explains. There's a. Tasfir explains Quran, and Hadith is narrations that are not in the Quran. The Quran, how it was recorded and preserved, should be viewed more as a historical book of set events for a group of people, right? But
What?
I was just going to say, that's why would an eternal book, which is for all mankind, that has been sitting by Allah for all eternity, if it's just a historical book, then why does it only have a relevance for the 20 years that Muhammad was a prophet?
Okay. Well, first you got to understand that the Quran in the time of Muhammad is Muhammad. Okay, because
the Quran is Muhammad.
Yes, the Quran is Muhammad's life. It's his experience. It is essentially him. Okay.
But, Aziz, there is nothing in the Quran about Muhammad. Nothing.
Yeah, but it's everything. Well, where do we get the Quran from? We get it from Muhammad.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, but the narration is it comes from Muhammad, and it comes from Muhammad through interactions with the Sahaba and the infidels, right? And it is the preceding generations of Muslims who went back and recorded the Quran and preserved it as it is now. So this is what we're looking at. And
but you're not answering the question that Thunderous just asked.
Well, how is this particular verse pertaining to eternal wisdom?
How
is this particular verse pertaining to eternal wisdom? From the perspective of a Muslim, there are varying degrees in Allah's sight, because we believe that the Supreme Lord of the universe can see everything, right? So this verse, it conforms with our ideas of God, and anything less wouldn't be a God worthy of worship, would it be? I don't think
but
so.
We've just heard this 50 million times. In every third sentence, we see the same thing.
But you've just said a lot of things there, Aziz, that with respect, you've said something, but you've really showed nothing. Or you've showed
exactly. Because if you got, they certainly occupy different ranks, or they have varying degrees in the sight of Allah. And then you read the tafsir for this, and it says, well, there were 15 archers, and these 15 archers were feeling a little bit depraved, and then they came and complained, and the other 68 and a half, and the one was 15 years old, and he didn't count, and then the oldest one was 62, and then they put him up as a spokesman, and then he came and did, and he complained about it. So you're going into details that are nowhere to be found. How is this in any degree or any way any kind of a guidance for a human being today?
And can I just add on to that as well, if you don't mind, that when you consider the position of the Quran in Islamic life, and just going on with what Stops is saying there, that you've got the tafsirs which are commenting on this verse some 200 years, 400 years later. They can only go by the Isnad recital and whatever Quran they had access to at the time. So the source of the information for you to get your background is somewhat spurious and made up, because you can read two or three different tafsirs and come up with 2 or 3 historical different narratives as a conclusion of what the ayah is trying to say. So when you say that this is a historical book, it doesn't sit right with what we know about what the tafsirs are saying about this historical book. Because you can have one situation and have 3 or 4 tafsirs give 3 or 4 different answers. And then when you're looking about the arguments between the archers and Muhammad and the spoils of war, if they're fighting for Allah, surely the spoils of war are the least concern for them. They're not fighting for Allah just to get some bounty out of it, or some booty, or some wages. They're fighting for Allah surely because it's the truth and the right thing to do. So why is there an ayah in the Quran for all eternity, backwards and forwards, about archers arguing over their wage?
I know. I get what you're trying to say. It may seem frivolous and convoluted explanation for to me, a very simple verse, But I mean, this goes to, the context of Muhammad and the Sahaba's exploits. They did bicker over these things. They bickered over like small things too, But I mean, to me, that just shows you, there is a real human experience behind this whole revelation. That is not just, like I don't know, angels from the sky. It's a real human experience in the desert, in the life of Muhammad, between city states and personalities and groups. I mean, to me, that's compelling from that perspective. I mean, maybe it doesn't satisfy your perspective of divine perfection.
But what I unlike my co-host, I respectfully put you, I actually do believe in a God. That's irrelevant. So I understand the perspective that you're trying to come with. Now my question would be then, going along with what you're saying, why aren't you a Mormon? What's the difference between you becoming a Muslim or say stopping being a Muslim and becoming a Mormon then? If it's because it relates to a man's human being thinking, you can see the wisdom behind that, you can derive the same benefits from the Book of Mormon.
I don't think so. I don't think you can derive the same benefits from the Book of Mormon. I think I would derive more benefits from the Book of Taoism than the Book of Mormon. So that's not even a fair comparison. To me, you may see it the same, but I do not see it.
No, but both men met angels that nobody saw. Both men had messages that nobody saw them have. Both men claim to have miracles that nobody saw. Both men said they can have 4 wives each.
No.
There's a lot between them.
Look. The word miracle.
Both of those men, you have to take them at their word. So when you're saying that there's more Taoism, no, when you're looking at the Book of Mormon and Muhammad, you're actually seeing a lot more in common than that maybe you're explaining yourself.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But anyway, coming back to the point, coming back to the point of this ayah, you're seeing an argument between archers getting their wages. What I don't understand is, surely if you're fighting for Allah and being a part of that army for Allah would be more important than the amount of money you're going to get out of it. I mean, I don't see the benefit in that.
Okay, I mean, how would you run a campaign? You cannot run a campaign off faith alone.
All the other religions in the past did.
No, name one.
Judaism.
They ran an army off faith alone.
Yes. Have you not read the Torah like you're supposed to as a Muslim?
I have read the Torah, but I know that military. I know.
That was the whole point of miracles. The whole point of miracles were for them to have faith in their God.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you're mistaken, 100%. Because if you do anything, then wait. I don't want to get into this, but I'll get into something else similar. If you want to do anything, it requires some type of expenditures, whether it's caloric or monetary. So if people are running off the fat reserves in their body and they're squabbling over, can we eat some food so we can continue what we need to do? Or they're arguing over actual coinage so they can continue their military exhibitions for whatever objective that they deem worth fighting for. I mean, you still need, you need to have a system of payment and reward to manage any enterprise that is going to produce anything of any tangible result.
Okay, so in effect, what you're saying is then that the only reason that these men were fighting for Allah was what they're going to get out of it, not because it was the true thing to do or the right thing to do. So you're saying then, to be a Muslim,
most definitely within the narration in Muslim sources, there was a group of people that was solely motivated by monetary gain, in the midst of people who were truly motivated by righteous gain. Now, in the Quran, there is many distinctions and differentiations about these people within the life of Prophet Muhammad. So within that backdrop, you still need the basic understanding of rudimentary economics to run any military campaign. Like, just because a group of people say that they're divinely inspired by the word of God and they raise an army, all of a sudden makes them illegitimate? Why? No, to me that doesn't. Why? Because they're willing. Because they're willing. They're willing to trade. No, hold up. They're willing to trade in the marketplace. They're willing to tax people that they have subjugated. All of a sudden, their message is illegitimate.
I'm going to conclude on this point because I'll leave you with this point, so then we can move on. 123,999 prophets have gone before Muhammad, and in whether you accept scripture or not, in any holy writing, we do not find an account like this where people are bickering over money and fighting for God. I'll leave it there.
Hold up. No, hold up. If we take a look at Judaism, and the people who follow Jewish scripture, when they conquered the land of Canaan, not only did they massacre the inhabitants of Canaan, they taxed the subjects.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, well, I look forward to you finding me that verse. I look forward to you finding me that
verse. No, I'm telling you what happened, and you can find
it. Then don't talk about it. Back it up with evidence.
Hold up. Thunderous one. You honestly believe that Judaism or Jewish people, when they conquered Canaan, they didn't exact tribute from their neighbors who were not.
No, they
believe
didn't.
That.
Guys, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
You do not believe that? Okay, all right. Hold up.
They didn't.
Let's not go there. We're not here to critique.
No, that's why I said I want to stop the conversation on that point. That it seems that Allah, people are only fighting for Allah for what money they can get out of it. Not
no, you're wrong. There's people who fight for money, regardless if they're doing it for Allah or environmentalism or any political bullshit. There's always going to be people who are
this
going
is
to do something for money.
This is God. You're saying that God hires mercenaries then?
God hires mercenaries. I don't think God needs to hire anybody.
Mercenaries. These archers are talking like mercenaries.
They're bickering over something
like mercenaries.
That me and you deem frivolous. I wouldn't bicker over money.
Like mercenaries. So
at the same time, nobody does anything for free.
People do it for God. They do. People will do. You're talking about the ecosystem. People go and parade and protest about the ecosystem, abortion, people locked up in prisons when they shouldn't be. They do it for free. So your point is lost on that. We've got evidence all around the world. Amnesty International, the Red Cross. How many charities do you want me to name where people sacrifice their own time and their own assets?
Yes, there's many people.
And yet your mercenaries. They want to charge God for acting for him.
No, you're wrong. Because there's many Muslims and non-Muslims who believed in Muhammad's cause, and they gave everything they owned.
Apart from these mercenaries.
But Thunderous, hang on a moment, Aziz.
Okay.
But Thunderous, a question for you. I mean, at best or at worst, depending on how you look at it, all that somebody could argue is that these were bad Muslims, right?
But they're acting for God, and it's in the Quran for all time.
Well,
I mean, again, a Muslim could just say, "Hey, this is an example of bad Muslims." So I'm showing you this. This is something that I put in the Quran for all time as an example to show bad Muslims.
But these are not. Allah's not saying that. The Tafsir's not saying that. The Hadith are not saying that. You're saying that now, 1400 years away from the event, having to try and clean this mess up.
No, that's
Allah is the best communicator. He chooses a prophet that's supposed to be the best communicator with eloquent speech and everything, and nobody seems to make head or tails of what this situation is.
No,
we're having to make it up 1400 years later, try and make sense of it.
I'll let you continue, Rob. You want?
But that's fine. Somebody could just say, okay, whatever they may not have known it, or let's put it in there as they could ad hoc give an explanation which just says, hey, the reason it's in here is because he wanted to show this lesson of these bad Muslims who were, brought about, they had his wrath because they were going after the booty, right, instead of just doing it for the glory of Allah. So these are, quote, bad Muslims, and here he is rebuking them, right?
So why isn't the tafsir saying that? Why isn't Muhammad saying that? Why isn't Allah saying that? By saying, look at this example of them, they're not fighting for me. All they're interested in what they can get out from me.
This goes into Islamic literature. I mean, there's commentary on the commentary as well. I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person to say what I'm saying on, this internet broadcasting. So I think you're slightly misinformed, Thunderous.
What is he misinformed about, though? What is he misinformed about exactly?
Well, I think he's misinformed because he demands a certain purity from Islamic sources, but even these Islamic sources themselves say during the course of Prophet Muhammad he was dealing with these types of people.
Okay, but what is he uninformed about, though?
I mean, the whole chapter of Al-Munafiqeen, which means the hypocrites, is individuals like this, is rebuking individuals like this. And I think this is a prelude to the chapter of Al-Munafiqeen, which rebukes them.
Okay. I want to exit from this conversation because I think it's got to the point where no one's going to be satisfied. But I would like.
I'm okay. I think we did very well. We can go on to the next verse, but
sure.
All right, let's move on then.
Yeah.
164.
I just want to ask one question. You said that the only intention here was for God to show us that he knows everything.
I said that? I said something along those lines when I read this verse. When I looked at this verse without looking at the tafsir and trying to figure out the context, when my eyes first read this verse in English, to me it seems that God knows what's going on, because to me, it's like algebra. It means that there was people who thought that they can get away because God cannot see what they do. So this is, yeah.
Have you changed your mind on that, or are you still of that opinion?
I mean, my understanding of this verse it does not conflict with what it is trying to convey, in my opinion. I don't think.
Okay, so why have we been talking the last half an hour about a sentence with a very simple message, which is, I know everything?
I don't know. I mean, it went into side tangents that I think Thunderous and I both wanted to go in.
Exactly. Yeah, but why? Why are there? This is a God, okay? God can do anything. So shouldn't this God be able, if he wants to convey to us the message, I know all sorts of things, why not say that? Why go, they occupy different ranks and seer, why not say, listen, I know what the fuck's going on. Just trust me. And that's it. Instead of just going into all these different stories and creating all these things with people going crazy. I want more money or more women or whatever. I mean, what the hell is the point of this?
I mean, if you look at the verse, I think maybe in Arabic it's less words in English, but I mean, even though in English it's like maybe, I don't know, 15 words maximum, but I mean, it's a very straightforward verse.
I think it's the opposite. This is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. I think this is so convoluted. This is so like. I mean, this is so fat. There is nothing there. I mean, if you remove all the fat, there's nothing there. It's just the God, it's seer of everything. Okay, great. Yeah. Allah sees well all that they do. Well, brilliant. Isn't there a better way of saying this? I'm saying exactly the opposite, that this is bringing a lot of confusion into the picture. This is exactly why I was asking you. You said this in the beginning, have you changed your mind? To show exactly how confusing these sentences actually are.
I think what's slightly more confusing than these sentences is the multiple tafsir to explain the sentence, right? To me, that
but these are the people who show us how these sentences were understood a couple of 100 years later.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Okay, but that's
fair
cool.
Enough, but
that was just my point. Yeah,
fair enough. There's 12 commentaries. I think 12 famous commentaries, and some of them agree with each other. Some of them have conflicting views. I mean, not in the sense of contradicting each other. Maybe sometimes there is, but it just tells you that, like there's many ways to understand or read or get confused by some of these verses.
That's my point. That's exactly my point. I mean, if I were a god, I would try and be very clear and say, listen, I know what's going on. Just do what I told you or else. Finished.
But this is supposed to be a book made clear, a book easy to understand.
And this is exactly the opposite. That's exactly my point. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, who really makes it complicated? Is it the book or is it us?
The people who wrote the book. The people who wrote the book. They said, okay, they're coming up with all sorts of stories. You need a context. You need this. You don't even know when or where. You say, well, this could be a Medina one. Well, you don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows when this was brought about. We have no clue when this was written and by whom. We just know that the people who wrote this were very, very confused. So they didn't even know how to sort the paragraphs. And, so they plus minus put them in an order of descending length. But even that is not consistent. So this is complete chaos. So, and then Muslims come to me and say, well, everything is clear. This is a book written by a God. And then all I see is this huge, big mess where nobody agrees what the book actually says, where the individual sentences are causing the mess. So whoever wrote this did not know what they were doing at all.
I don't agree with.
No, of course you can't.
No.
Well, the thing is,
you assume. Well, first of all, you assume that you assume that I make statements like, what do you call it? This book is for mankind. I think this book is for man, which is slightly different than mankind, because I think my perception of mankind is that it's the good and the bad. But I perceive it to be for man. The same
Ahmed Didat and Zachary Naik and many of your scholars for dollars on Peace TV.
Well, the thing is, there's many right now. As if we look at the Muslim landscape right now, there's many streams of thought. It doesn't even do the justice of how many.
For a book made clear, for a book easy to understand.
Honestly, I never have any problems reading the Quran and the multiple tafsir. It doesn't really confuse me. To me, it's a very interesting experience. I enjoy reading the Quran and the tafsirs. I feel like I learn something new every time. I agree with you guys in the sense that it is confusing when multiple people with multiple ideas try to definitively say one thing or the other. But to me, I think that there's too much conflicting ideas being jammed at once.
Aziz, if you read the tafsir, don't you realize that they are saying very, very different things? Don't you realize that even the scholars, the people who know the entire Quran, that they are totally confused?
But this is something that maybe will interest you, but I mean, Muslims have been talking about this for a very long time. I mean, there's commentaries about why there's so many commentaries on the Quran. There should be one.
But hang on, why are you a Muslim then? Well, how can you be a Muslim and tell me there's only one God and this is the message and this is the one message that every human being should know and read and understand if it is so confusing? Even the scholars are confused. Nobody understands the Quran. And then you're telling me I'm a Muslim because everything is so clear.
Hold up. There's a few metaphysical concepts that I hold true, which is to me 100%. You can't force another person to accept another man's metaphysical concepts about the Quran, the nature of the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But you need to also admit that it doesn't make sense if you compare it with reality and you compare it with an objective reading of the book, which is what we are doing here.
Okay, sure. Look, if I had multiple forms of what do you call it, tafsir, or I don't know, let's DJ remix it a little bit. Let's say I have different versions of the Quran, right? That's like, a blasphemy in the current Islamic mindset. But I'm just saying, for a thought experiment, let's just say I have different.
Gibson.
What?
about different versions of the Quran. That argument's already been completed now. There are different versions of the Quran. I didn't mean to
all right. Let me delight you. Let's just say, for the sake of some hypothetical reasoning or some, thought experiment, I have multiple forms of the Quran, right? And I tell you, you can choose one, reject one, grab a whole bunch, let you decide type of thing, right? There's nothing wrong with that inherently, because there's an element of choice in the matter, and the individual chooses the version of the Quran that they want to, explore or whatever. The problem becomes is when a group of people take a particular version of the Quran, let's say, and they want to institutionalize it, right? They want to institutionalize it, and they want to create a monopoly around it. Okay, so this is the chief problems, I would say, with the Islamic world currently, because it seems like there is, and if you're truly a consumer of Islamic literature and Islamic thought, you understand that monopoly of anything is an anathema to the Muslims, except the monopoly of God being the most supreme. But this is what I'm trying to say. The institutionalization of certain streams of thought in Islam has yielded the most destructive elements that the Muslim world has endured, and we see this perpetuating to this day as well. So,
okay, based on what?
Based on what? Could you be a little more specific? I said a few.
Okay, but what is leading to that? What is leading up to that? Why do we have this situation? Why isn't there only... Okay, well, it says in the Quran many times, don't have any gods next to me. Well,
yes.
That would mean if there are no other gods, you cannot possibly have another god next to me. So this is, it's making it look a bit stupid, because you can only say you're not allowed to worship other gods if there are other gods. So this is, it's illogical. So what I'm asking is, if I have an illogical situation, I must have other gods, so there must be a mention of something. So what is it that is leading to the situation that we have in Islam the way that you are describing it?
I think. Look, here's an important element that happened in Europe: the separation of church and state, and that was championed by Protestants. They felt that, when the church and state came together, they molested, the true spirit of the church. So
I don't think you're right with that. I think this happened much earlier.
Right with that. No, I think I am very right with that. The separation of church and state was championed by Protestants mainly, because they were tired of the Catholic Church interfering with state politics and confusing.
Yeah, but it's in the Bible, it's in the New Testament all along. But
exactly,
that doesn't really answer my question. You describe the situation of Islam. And my question is, why do you think this is the way that it is? Why do you have all these different variations? Why do you have all these different lines of thought? Why do you have all these different ways of looking at Islam the way that we have it today?
Why do I think it is the way it is today? Mainly
Correct.
because of multiple events that have happened in the past. That's why I think it is the way today. Like
events in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you gave me a very general question, so I can only give you a very general answer.
So there's nothing that you can pinpoint. I mean, things that happened in the past. We've got like 1400 years of past.
I would say the biggest development was when the Ottomans took over the Abbasid Caliphate. And, I say this was probably the biggest, because the Ottoman Empire essentially...
yeah, but that's 700 years, eh?
Well, yeah, it is 700 years. I mean, like, the Ottoman Empire ruled the vast majority of... Between the Ottomans and the Persians and the Mughals, I mean, there was only 3 Muslim powers that ruled, the vast majority of Muslim lands for about 800 to 700 years. I mean, and within
the others? What happened to this? I mean, come on, the people in Spain, they continued. They dissected.
Well, I'm pretty sure they were kicked out by, I don't know, the end of the 15th century. Like, I mean,
I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
No, but what do you want to know about the? I don't know too much, but what is the question about the Muslims in Spain? What are you trying to get at? Like they were an outpost in Europe or something? Like what is it?
Yeah, they were left behind. They kept their own little caliphates and their little kingdoms when the rest sort of joined up under the Ottomans, but they still continued on until, I mean, they were eventually kicked out by Isabel and Ferdinand, but this was 13th century. But then nothing really happened to those people. They stayed. I mean, they were not part of the Ottoman Empire. It didn't reach that far. So how come there was no movement which incorporated all Muslims? Why did we always have pockets of individual caliphates all over the world? Because the Indian caliphates, the Persian,
I think
all
that is
different people were all different.
That thought stream, I think, is mainly championed by the Muslim Brotherhood and Hizb ut-Tahrir. They like to.
Yeah, but that's mainstream.
That's not mainstream. It's not a mainstream belief, but I mean the influence of Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Islamic Brotherhood. They would like to paint a unified Muslim force, and the only people are the heretical Ismailis or the Shiites or the misguided Sufis. I mean, this is, and the funny thing is, a vast majority of Muslim Brotherhood guys happen to be Sufis, but that's another question. But forget that for a minute. This is, I mean, I think the biggest lie in the propaganda war within the Muslim world is that Muslims were unified under one belief, and I think that comes mainly from the Muslim Brotherhood and what do you call it? Saudi Arabia. I have to be honest. I mean, because it serves their interest. They hold Mecca and Medina, and I mean, it's a good idea to propagate this idea that we were all once unified on this one. Nobody had any questions. I mean, but that's a fallacy from the beginning. I mean, from the very beginning of Islam.
Okay, but if you look at the situation, the way that it is today, and you then go and look at the Quran and you look at reality today, don't you see that there's a huge disparity, that there's a huge gap here, that one cannot be reconciled with the other?
Of course, because somebody is lying.
Okay, exactly. So where are you as a person, as a Muslim, going if you see these differences? If you see that if you read the Quran, it's giving you a totally different story than what we have from the Wahhabis or from Muslim Brotherhood or what we have in reality today. Yeah. Why does that not make you think, hang on, there's something very wrong here?
There is something very wrong. But to say that it originates from the Quran and the Muslims, I don't agree. I don't agree because
sometimes I think you're not actually a Muslim.
No. I'll tell you.
You're making too much sense.
No. The thing is, I look to my Quran for guidance. In a situation like this, I want to do, my natural instinct is to run to the cave. In a situation like this, go to the cave for sanctuary. If you know what I mean. You see, stops. You understand what I'm talking about. But the thing is,
yeah, but I don't understand the consequences. I don't understand that you don't take the consequences. I don't understand why you're not going one step further when you have all the right ideas, all the right sort of pictures and bits and pieces in front of you, but you hesitate to put them together.
No. To me, the thing is, you assume that, you probably, rightly so, you've had a lot of individuals on this show that made me cringe, for sure. You probably,
exactly.
Okay, so probably you assumed that I could be one of them, and I don't blame you, and that's okay. But the thing is, for me, the rational and the spiritual are interfused. They're one and the other to me. Okay, that's how it is. This is how I was trained up as a young boy in understanding Islam, ration and reason. One cannot exist without the other. This is my upbringing, number one. But forget that noise for a minute. the thing is, back to the idea about Muslim groups trying to institutionalize their version of Islam. In the process of doing that, they molest the core fundamental teachings of Islam. They turn it into something it's not. They turn it into the evil Islamic State, which is it is evil. I mean, if you show people, hey, this is Islamic State, is this evil? If they tell you no, then these people are very, very misguided, because something. So they read the Quran, they pray 5 times a day, they've memorized a whole bunch of hadith, but nonetheless they are perpetrating evil. So there's people who read the Quran, memorize hadith, believe in God, pray 5 times a day, but they're not doing this. But it's false to say that the reason why they're not doing this is because they're not good Muslims. They're not perpetrating evil because they're not good. They're not good Muslims. The good Muslims are ISIS. This is wrong. This is, in my opinion, this is wrong, because I'll give you a good example. The 5 pillars of Islam: fasting, praying. They all have to have an element of choice in the matter. Anything else becomes something else. If you remove the element of choice, for example, if you're forced to fast, it becomes starvation. If you're forced to pay zakat, it becomes taxation. But that's like the problem with these modern Muslim movements. They seek to institutionalize Islam. They want an Islamic flag and an Islamic anthem and an Islamic state and an Islamic constitution. All this shit is foreign. This is not from our teachings. Why do we need these things? The number one thing that Muslims need to have is a personal relationship with the one supreme God. So all of a sudden they need to have an Islamic emblem or an Islamic logo. This is not from our tradition whatsoever.
Do you not think that the Quran is the final authority on everything that you're saying? The Quran is the final authority, and the very organizations that you're talking about are using the Quran to confirm their point. So if Muhammad was alive today, he would more likely, when we read the Quran, see that ISIS and Muhammad identify themselves with each other a lot closer than Muhammad identifies with you. I don't imagine, Aziz, with the greatest respect, you sound like a really nice guy. And I want to compliment you on something, but I'll do that later. But I don't think you would go get yourself a 9-year-old girl and have sex with her. But Muhammad did. Right? But Muhammad did.
Because
right?
because
so you can't tell me the guy, or I don't think, imagine whatever religious reasons, that you would take down the trousers of 600 men and see if they've got pubic hair, and if they've got pubic hair, you'll behead them.
Okay, look, there are things that happen that we do not have an appetite for today. Things that have happened.
He's your role model. He's your role model.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. No problem. Let's look at it one at a time. One at a time. What do you call a person who marries a 9-year-old? Hold up. It's very easy. What do you call a person who has sex with a 9-year-old? What do you call
a rapist?
That's it?
Well,
no, Muhammad.
Or Muhammad, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, no, but what do you call them?
A rapist.
Would you call them a pedophile? Would you call them a rapist?
No, that's something different.
You wouldn't call them a pedophile. So, okay, let's call them a rapist. If pedophile is too lenient for Muhammad, let's make it simple.
A pedophile is a state of mind that you do habitually with all sorts of children. Muhammad.
Okay, let him go where he wants to go. Let's wait.
Okay. So you charge him to be a rapist. I'm not fit to defend Muhammad, but I will do it just for the stream. And I don't think you're fit to accuse him or judge him of anything, in my opinion. But for the sake of, I don't think you're.
What basis can I not judge a man who's had sex with a 9-year-old girl when he's at the age of 54? On what basis can I not judge that man?
I don't think you're fit to judge him.
How am I not fit? You're trying to tell me then, if I'm not fit, no human alive, past present, is fit enough to judge Muhammad when, as a 54-year-old man, he has sexual intercourse with a 9-year-old girl. If I'm not fit enough, that means by implication no man's fit enough.
Where does your passion stem from? In in this matter?
Well, first of all, I've got.
Is it in search of justice? Is it in search of what is wrong, what is right? Or is it stemmed by self-righteous damnation you wish to seek to inflict on Muhammad? What is it? What is it coming from?
Well, the same thing is coming from all mankind, that 9-year-old girls should not be raped by 54-year-old men.
Well, this is your charge. If you give me a minute, I can address it. You know,
by implication, you're following. Obviously, if you're going to address it, that means you condone it.
Look,
if you're going to address
let's be honest. Hold on. Let's brush all the bullshit. Let's brush all the bullshit. Hold up.
No, if you're going to condone it, then by implication you accept it, and you're going to take that as your role model. So by implication, then you're saying rape of by a 54-year-old man of a 9-year-old girl in your eyes is morally justified because you're now.
I say it's very easy for people to, retroactively condemn people as if, they have the moral authority to do so. But let's say this. People have called Muhammad a pedophile, a child molester, a predator, a rapist because he had sexual relations with a 9-year-old. That's enough to make people condemn Muhammad, despise Muhammad. You can say whatever you want about Muhammad. Doesn't bother me. But if you look at the details, it's far more revealing. Muhammad married a 9-year-old, and that's the narration. That's the narration. A 9-year-old. When I read it,
it was 6-year-old when he married a 9-year-old.
Okay, let's bring it a couple of notches down. A 6-year-old and a 90-year-old. Do you want to flip the script? Let's say he's 90, and let's say she's 6. She was married to him by her father in a ceremony in front of everybody in a community.
The ceremony written down.
In a community.
You're lying about that. There was no
community.
Ceremony.
Hold up. Let me tell you something. Muhammad was condemned. People in Muhammad's own community, when he married the wife of his adopted son, people went up to him and gave him hell for that. But nobody. So I'm trying to say nobody went up to Muhammad and said, "What are you doing with the 6-year-old?"
What does Muhammad do?
No, guys,
Okay.
wait, Aziz, Thunderous, wait a second. Aziz, what you are doing now is you're committing special pleading because you're saying, okay, the people at the time accepted it.
No.
And the people at the time might have accepted it. But we know today that it is wrong. It doesn't matter whether the people at the time accepted it. It's the same for all these things. It's the same for slavery or whatever you want to take. We know these things are wrong today, and they were just as wrong in those days. So if anybody were to be a moral guideline, they should have not accepted it, and they should have condemned it at the time. If they did not do this at the time, something that we know today is wrong, that we know that it's not right to have sex with a 9-year-old girl, it should not have been right 1,000 years ago. Muhammad would have, just as it says, do not kill your children out of poverty. He should also say, do not have sex with girls just because they have now hit puberty or something. This is the point. It's not about whether the people at the time accepted it, whether the people at the time were correct with it and couldn't condemn Muhammad at the time. It is all of time that we are talking about.
Okay, fair enough.
Can I add on that as well, that Muhammad also killed his critics. So it'd be hard for anybody to be critical of Muhammad when his critics were being murdered by him. And also, we're talking about isnads. We're talking about isnads, which would have been selective in what they decided to remember and what they decided to keep out as far as Muhammad's image is concerned. So there could well have been critics out criticizing him. Some of them could well have been murdered, and some of those hadith that were being critical of Muhammad marrying a 6-year-old girl and intercoursing her when she was 9 could well have been removed or not mentioned.
Okay, who should I address first, Thunderous or Stops? I don't know. I kind of feel like
go.
Okay, fair enough. I can let it go. But one closing thing I would like to say is that Prophet Muhammad's marriage to Aisha has been discussed. Her age has been discussed. The conditions of her marriage have been discussed, and her life after, during, and before she got married have all been discussed in Islamic literature. It is nothing new to us. The only issue that I have with the whole Aisha and Muhammad situation is that people like to compare Muhammad to a rapist and a pedophile when, if you look at all these things, he has not committed a crime in any stretch of the imagination.
A 9-year-old girl consented to having sex with a 54-year-old man.
Like I said
knew what
before.
sex was. She knew what intercourse was, yeah?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you say that she knows what intercourse is. I mean, they're teaching what, sex is to 7-year-olds in some countries and some states. I mean, you tell me, does a 7-year-old know what intercourse is?
Would you have sex with a 9-year-old girl then? You follow your
My
mama's
preference?
No,
are you asking for my
okay
preference? Well, I don't think. Well, the thing is, I think this is where we need to draw a slight distinction. Just because I don't condemn Muhammad doesn't mean I have to have sex with a 9-year-old because he's a role model or whatever you want to say it is. I'm just saying that the nature of that. The thing is, you got to look at it again. Muhammad was married multiple women.
Yeah, no, one of them over the age of 35 when he was in his 50s.
Sure. So, if he's a pedophile or a rapist, you would see a pattern in how he targets his victims. But he doesn't have any victims. He doesn't have predatory.
Yeah, we do see a pattern. We see the miraculous surah appear, whenever he wants to get his own way. So we do see a pattern.
But now, Thunders, now we're going really, really way off. We've established that Muhammad is not the best guy, and Aziz has accepted it, that there are things which are dubious. Yeah, okay. I think there's no further point in discussing this because I think we all actually we agree on this.
Apart from Aziz, who thinks it's okay for a 54-year-old man to have sex with a 9-year-old girl.
Well, but Aziz said it's not okay.
Look.
He said it's okay. He said because he's been justifying it. That's what he's been.
No, it is not okay. He said it's not okay. It was just that at the time nobody objected.
So it's okay. So
look. What I'm saying, what I'm saying is something what Stops is saying and what you're trying to say. I'm saying that it happened according to our traditions. I have no problem with it.
So you think it's okay then? If you don't have a problem with it, you think it's okay?
I don't have a problem with a political marriage that was celebrated by the community of Prophet Muhammad. I don't have a problem with that. You are conflating it. You are conflating it with rape and pedophilia.
I never said pedophilia.
Wait.
I condemn rape. I condemn pedophilia. I condemn anything that is of any predatory nature. I condemn any sexual intercourse with anybody that causes a victim and traumatic scarring. But if you look at the life of Prophet Muhammad and Aisha, it does not fit what you're trying to condemn Prophet Muhammad with.
Okay, let me retort to that. First of all, he got a miraculous dream saying that Aisha was brought to him by Allah in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for starters, you've got that to try and contend with. Then he marries a 6-year-old girl. He takes her to bed when she's 9 years old, and all of this seems to be somehow rationalized in your own mind through religion. You claim political reasons, but Islam at that time wasn't a political ideology, and there was no political gain for Muhammad in marrying her as far as Abu Bakr was concerned. He was already his best friend. So that line of reasoning doesn't make sense. No, this is not going anywhere. The sum total is 99% of mankind that's non-Muslim would say that that's wrong, and you're saying it's okay because it was Muhammad. So let's just leave it there. We're not getting anywhere.
If you want to move on, I can move on.
No, we're moving on. We'll move on.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. 164, Sai International. Certainly did Allah confer great favor upon the believers when he sent among them a messenger for themselves, reciting to them his verses and purifying them and teaching them the book and wisdom, although they had been before in manifest error. Yusuf Ali. Allah did confer great favor on the believers when he sent among them a messenger from among themselves, rehearsing unto them the signs of Allah, sanctifying them and instructing them in scripture and wisdom, while before that they had been in manifest error.
Okay, that to me is relatively clear.
Well, could you read the first translation again? Because it says something quite interesting.
Certainly did Allah confer favor upon the believers when he sent among them a messenger for themselves, reciting to them.
For themselves. So it's not a book for all mankind then if he sent them a message, it's just for themselves.
What? Say that again?
If he sent a messenger just for themselves, then it can't be a book for all mankind then, surely.
No, from themselves. In other words, you took a group of people, and from that group, he said, "You're going to be a prophet. You're going to be conveying my message."
I thought he said from themselves, not for. Sorry.
From themselves. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought you said for themselves. My mistake.
No worries. Is there anything anybody wants to add there?
Yeah, it's we're talking about 165 or 164.
164.
164. Can you see on screen there or not?
Yeah, I can see it. I'm looking at it from my my thing. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. I'm good.
Okay. Let's go on to 165. Sai International, why is it that when a single disaster struck you on the day of Uhud, although you had struck the enemy in the battle of Badr with one twice as great, you said, from where is this? Say, it is from yourselves. Indeed, Allah is over all things competent. Yusuf Ali, what? When a single disaster smites you, although you smote your enemies with one twice as great, do ye say, whence is this? Say to them, it is from yourselves, for Allah hath power over all things.
Okay, this is total gibberish for me anyway.
He mentioned the misfortune on the day of Uhud, saying, as it was when a disaster smote you on the day of Uhud, although you had smitten them with disaster twice as great as you inflicted on the people of Mecca on the day of Badr, a disaster twice that inflicted upon you on the day of Uhud.
Well, okay, just 1 minute. Like sometimes it's easier to read without the brackets, you know, because sometimes they insert brackets in the English version.
Yeah, I don't think that makes a lot of difference. Wait, when a single disaster smites you, although you smite with one twice as great, do you say, whence is this? Say, it is from yourselves, for Allah has power over all things. I'm not sure that makes it any clearer.
What elements do you have here? You have a disaster smiting you. In other words, these are the believers, right? So you have something happening to the believers. This is the one element. Then as the next element is, okay, this was a bit of a setback, but the second element here is you have inflicted twice as much suffering on your enemy. In other words, you were hit by something, but you hit the others twice as hard.
Yeah,
and then you say, why did this happen to us? This is the question. So this is the third element.
Yeah,
and then the fourth element, and this is what confuses me, this is a consequence of your own deeds. What?
No, it's like, have you ever, because this is the time when Muslims were outnumbered and, you know, so just think of it like, you know, like the scrawny guy, if he just stands in front of a big bully and he doesn't get knocked out, he looks like he won. So I think this is what it's trying to convey. It's like,
okay, I understand this. These are the first three elements, but what is the fourth one?
What? Allah's...
This is a consequence of your own deeds, because those elements that you, these first three elements that you just brought up, I understand that. And I even understand why did this happen to us. They're still saying, well, hang on, why did we even have this confrontation? Why did this bully come up to me? But then this is a consequence of your own deeds. And then God is omnipotent. Come on. This doesn't make sense.
yeah, but you got to understand this is also like how you can say words of encouragement too. When a Muslim reads this in a situation that they feel outnumbered, it's like words of encouragement that God is.
Hang on, you said the scrawny guy is standing there, and then you've got the bullion standing in front of him, and then you're saying, "Why did this happen to me?" And then the guy says, "Well, this is because of you."
Well, there's two things. When people, sometimes when people complain that they're being oppressed, right, or they're having a hard time, this is like you can also look at it like you brought that upon yourself. You left your car unlocked, so a thief went in. Don't say, like, for example, why do people steal? You should have kept your car locked, right? So it's like you bring things upon yourself, and but this is also pertaining to a battle, so it's like you're getting hit.
Oh, but how do you know that?
Because
Aziz, this is exactly my point. If you read the exegesis for this, they come up again with these amazing details, the amazing background stories, which do to a certain extent, they are able, let's say they don't, but they are able to explain this, like exactly what you are doing now. If you leave your car unlocked and somebody breaks in, then it's your own fault. Why did you well, I'm saying, now hang on, why do I need to lock my car in the first place? Because this God created the person who is going to break into my car. I shouldn't have to lock my car because it says there, God is omnipotent. So again, we have the claim and we have reality, and then we have what it says in the Quran, and those things don't mix.
But the thing is, but that's not fair, because the part where I'll tell you why it's not fair.
It's not fair.
No, I'll tell you why it's not fair. It's not fair how you explained it, because you're saying I shouldn't lock my car because God is omnipotent. Just because God is omnipotent doesn't mean he's not going to allow a vandal or a thief to steal something from your car.
Why not?
Because this is not a utopia.
Is this an evil God?
It's not an evil God.
So it creates evil people just to test the good people.
Hold up. No, it depends. Do you think that death and sickness is evil?
No.
Okay. So
hang on.
In this world, we see people who die and who
hang on. No, Aziz, I need to take that back. Because now I need to think like a theist. And from a theist point of view, the answer is yes. From a realist, then it's no.
Muslims, wait, hold up. Theists or Muslims? There's some theists. You're right. There are some theists who believe that death and sickness is evil, right? But that does not. But then you got to ask yourself if that's coherent with a God that creates everything.
Yeah, but is sickness something good?
Sickness is something good.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
No. You don't. You will never be able to explain it to me. This is
I'll tell you why.
Discussion that is based very, very different.
If you're smart, you'll agree with me. If you're stubborn,
I'm not smart.
You'll disagree with me. If you're sick, it means your immune system is working.
Okay, then I'm not smart. I don't agree with you.
No? Okay.
No.
If you're sick, that means your body is fighting.
For me, there is a contradiction here that the people are asking, why did this happen to us? And then somebody says, this is because of what you did. Okay, so this is number one. This is for me not something that makes sense. And then it says God is omnipotent. This is the second thing that for me is a contradiction. It shouldn't be here. God being omnipotent, in other words, all powerful, Number one is illogical in itself. And number two, putting it here is totally wrong because they have just suffered a defeat and God is omnipotent. Why does he let his own believers, the people who believe that he is God, let them suffer and let them go and let the families suffer, that suddenly there's nobody there because they were killed or injured or whatever.
Okay.
This is not being omnipotent.
Okay, there's
no, this is
good.
not a free will argument.
No, I like this. I'll tell you why. In this world, whether it's created by God or if it's a random event culminating to 14 billion years, let's just say, would it ever be conceivable for, I don't know, a group of people who are, not disciplined in any type of way, be able to effectively defend themselves? Right? Can you have a situation where you have a bunch of rabble, who are able to defeat, I don't know, a professional army in any stretch of the imagination? Is that a reality?
Sure.
Name one.
No, I can think of one. I didn't say that it actually happened. I can think of one, yeah.
That's fictional or non-fictional event?
No, I mean, look at the huge crowd in Hong Kong, for example, who managed to overwhelm like the entire police force there due to the sheer numbers.
Yes, this is protesters who are relatively peaceful. And when I say peaceful, I mean they're not using guns, but they're using everything else. But, there's a certain element of restraint that the Hong Kong police have to, display.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
You asked for an example, I gave you an example.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the protesters in Hong Kong are winning.
Okay, what is your point?
My point is, if you have a Roman legion fighting a bunch of
okay,
retards,
done. What is your point with this?
Okay, I'm saying, how could it ever be possible in a world that is created by God or a world that is based off evolution that a bunch of idiots are able to defeat a Roman legion? No, what I'm trying to say is that it won't happen. It can never happen. It defies, our understanding of the universe. A Roman legion cannot be defeated by a bunch of idiots. Yes or no?
Okay, so if this is your definition, then how does that fit now into this sentence?
Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that this is also applicable to this verse, in the sense that if these Muslims are going to win any battles, they have to display some level of discipline, regiment, obedience. They can't
I get all that.
Okay.
But what is your point?
Because you're saying, why would God give them a victory? I'm just saying he won't give them a victory for free.
I'm saying the sentence doesn't make sense because it says on the one hand that they were given like some people were injured, okay? Some people were killed, some people, I don't know what. So there was some sort of an infliction there. So this was something negative. And then it says God is omnipotent. So why would it say God is omnipotent when he has just allowed his people to be injured?
Because
it doesn't make sense. And then at the same time, it says,
but he's omnipotent. He's omnipotent, or is Allah's over all things competent. In God's universe, he has laws. He's not going to allow any people a margin of victory if they do not follow his rules. And in the Battle of Uhud, the rules of God were not followed versus the rules of God being followed in the Battle of Badr, right? Even in Muslim traditions, when we talk about the Battle of Badr, we say that the Muslims were highly organized, disciplined, and they were ready to fight. And they listened to Prophet Muhammad. But in the Battle of Uhud, they were disorganized. They were not listening to Muhammad, and they abandoned their posts. So God is not going to award any type of people that don't follow the fundamentals of the battlefield, the rules of the battlefield, with a victory. This is what it means to me.
Okay. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't belong here. It shouldn't be here. It shows how totally ridiculous this whole book is. It's just another example. So it's the same thing all over again. Next. Sorry, Rob.
Okay. Let's move on from there. 166. And what struck you on the day the two armies met was by permission of Allah that he might make evident the true believers. Yusuf Ali, what he suffered on that day the two armies met was with the leave of Allah in order that he might test the believers. So that's kind of what I've been saying all along, right? That's why it's in here to show this was a test. These people didn't follow his commands. They weren't faithful, etc., etc., right?
Same thing.
I think there's only one hadith here anyway. In fact, that's the hadith, sorry. Tafsir. Abu Sufyan, right?
Same thing.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the whole point of this thing and why it's in there. So that sort of summarizes it.
Can you go back? Can you go back to that? I just want to see the hadith.
Hadith or the tafsir?
The hadith where it mentions Abu Sufyan.
Oh no, that was the other one. That was tafsir.
Oh, that's tafsir mentioning Abu Sufyan.
That which befalls you of deaths and injuries on the day when the two armies met, the army of Muhammad and that of Abu Sufyan met, was by permission of Allah, by his will and decree, that he might know the true believers, that he might see the believers in jihad. Who's he? Is this Muhammad or is this Allah? Because presumably he knows he doesn't need to see them in any fighting. Who's capital He?
It was God's leave. So it was God's leave by his will, and he might know. So this looks like God doesn't know what the fuck's going on. So he's just letting the people fight, and then says he knows everything and is omnipotent. But the jihad here, notice please that again, the jihad is used not in the peaceful way, because Muslims always say jihad is always peaceful. No, it's not. In the majority of cases, it is exactly violence. It's the opposite. And here we see that the people who are fighting each other in jihad is...
But I think...
through the will of Allah. So this is what God wants. He wants them to fight for him.
Okay, but I one idea stops. How would... I mean, what's your preference to... fighting anything if it's not going to be a struggle, and you have to fight something to struggle against something, you know what I mean, for it to be a fight, you know what I mean, and that's what jihad means. It means to struggle, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's peaceful or warlike.
This is not breakdancing.
Huh?
This is not breakdancing.
It's true. Jihad is not breakdancing, but I mean, it's something that requires a level of fortitude to endure something, so it's you could say it's a tough struggle. It requires, you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to mean peace, because, sometimes
it necessarily has to mean that people get killed, arms get cut off, and you have widows, you have orphans, you have all sorts of things which, in my eyes, don't belong on this planet.
Okay, that's fair. I don't believe that they should belong on this planet either, but they do. It's a reality, ain't it?
Exactly. Therefore, God is not exactly a nice guy.
But this is God's world. He created it as such.
That's my point.
Okay,
so okay, next, please.
But hold up. Within this,
come on, Aziz. We agree. Come on.
But one idea, and then we move on. Okay? In any society, one needs to know how to wage war so he may experience peace. The most peaceful have to be the most prepared to wage war. Yes or no?
No.
What do we no? Okay, all right. I don't want to talk about it either.
No, it doesn't make sense, Aziz.
Really?
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense?
And here's the reason why. It's very simple. Right? That you have the power of God on your side. He can manipulate it in such a way that there's never, ever a war. Or he could smite the disbelievers himself. He doesn't require human beings to do his dirty work for him.
Yep.
Plus, he knew all of this as well. So none of this is necessary at all. Now, you could respond by saying, hey, he's teaching them a lesson, but this is a lesson that he wants them to learn because he's allowed them to get into this position in the first place. So that's fine. But then you can't say that he's all good. That's the problem that you have here, right? You can say that he's directing this. He's a director, but he's not an all good director. That's the problem.
Yeah, but you are creating a world, like you prefer a world that does not exist. You are saying we should have a world. Yeah, you should. Well, we have a world that does exist, that has rules, and people live it, and they die in it, and they breathe in it, and it's not constructed off subjective perceptions. It is consistent and objective. The things that we are talking about today, people have been talking about for thousands of years in the past, and they will continue to talk.
Yeah, but then it doesn't match the claims. This is the point. The claim is that this is an omnipotent, merciful God, and the claims that are being made about this God are totally, totally wrong. If this world were created by a God, which would be really fantastic, really great, would look after everybody, wonderful. But we don't have that.
Okay, if you look at America.
No. Come on, please, no.
I'm just saying America is very good at war. It has enjoyed substantial peace. They're very good at.
They're not.
They're very good at killing people. They're very good at killing people. Come on, somebody has to.
What's the point? What's the point of bringing up America, though?
Exactly.
Well, I'm just saying, like, America is very good at war. I mean, American citizens in the mainland have never experienced foreign armies entering its shores for the past 200 years.
Exactly. So doesn't that speak to my point?
Well, I don't think your point matches reality. I don't think.
What do you mean?
Because you prefer a world that does not exist. Well, I'm telling you, this world exists because it's the will of God.
Okay, but hang on a moment. It's not that it doesn't exist. We can imagine a world where people can learn lessons without the tremendous suffering that they go through.
I can imagine that I fly, but I would be a liar.
Okay, but if you say that God is all merciful and we have this world of tremendous suffering where we can imagine a world with less suffering and lessons can still be learned, then the claim of what God claims to be about himself and the reality that we see do not match.
Okay, okay, fine. I understand that. But to me, that the best way I can answer it is that, we are talking about creating a utopia on earth. And the question is that even possible?
Well, this is the all-powerful God, firstly, but we weren't talking about a utopia, but we can imagine a world with less suffering, tremendously less suffering, especially for innocents, children, animals.
A world that has less suffering or no suffering is a world before the Big Bang.
No, we're talking about a merciful God here. Remember, what is mercy? Right, the mercy is the what's the word? The relinquishment of punishment. Right? Because if this is a test/punishment, you can imagine a God who would be merciful and not invoke such a test and punishment, especially against the innocents. Let's take, for example, that all the adults had to learn these lessons. Babies, animals, the creatures that can suffer, that have no idea of why they are suffering. In what way is this merciful?
To live is to suffer. You have to find meaning.
Thank you very much. That refutes the mercy of God. That refutes the mercy of God.
Hold up.
Last week in the Quran, we looked at Allah prescribes when a person is going to be born and when a person dies. So do you subscribe to that too? That Allah, that wherever you are, when your death is being certified by Allah, there's nothing you can do about it. That day, that hour, that moment, you're going to die because it's been assigned by Allah, destined by Allah for you to die at that moment. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I believe. I believe we're all going to die, for one. Is it preordained? Is it predestined? Is it predetermined? Is it written in a book somewhere far, far away? I don't think it's a physical book, but you can say, it's written somewhere. Sure. We're all going to die. Is it?
No, that's not the question I asked. That's not the question I asked. The question I asked was, last week we discovered in the Quran that, and looking at the tafsirs as well, that there's a moment you're going to die that Allah already knows. So we were talking about the battles. Like there were some that stayed at home and some that went to a battle. And basically Allah was saying, well, it doesn't matter where you were, you're going to die in that moment anyway. So better for you to have died going to the war and dying as a martyr.
I know what you're talking about, but you're reading it wrong. You're reading it wrong. That verse was to rebuke those who said, "Don't go and die in the battle." And if they had power, they would be able to get rid of death in their presence, like, because they didn't want to die. But the thing is, everybody is going to die anyway, type of thing, and God knows when everybody's going to die. So, and we don't know when we're going to die. So why are we concerned about us dying? So that's what it is. Why you concern yourself about death? Because God determines it at the end of the day, not people saying, "Oh, don't go because you're going to die." That's not a good enough reason not to go and not fight, because you're going to die. Right? So I think
a rational human being would think, well, if I don't go to the war, the likelihood is I'm reducing the risk of me dying, so that's why they're not going to go to a war, because they're limiting the risk of them dying. So that's exactly what they did. But Allah's basically saying, well, you're going to die that day anyway. It doesn't matter if you stayed at home or go to war. So in effect, you may as well go to the war and die a hero than stay at home and die a coward. But they don't know when they're going to die, though. This is the point. A human being doesn't know the day and the hour that they're going to die.
You're also missing something very important that Allah tells His Muslim followers. He tells them that when you do die in the sake of Allah, you don't die, you live forever.
But you live forever. It doesn't matter if you die forever. Listen, if you die for Allah or not, you're still going to live forever. All that's determined is the location of where you live forever. Either up in heaven with 72 virgins, that perpetual virgins, every time you have intercourse with them, or you die in hell, or so you live in hell where the true zakum is, and every time for every glass of wine you've had, you're going to be given a glass of wine.
Hold up 1 second. All right, I just want to know, do you have a problem with virgins in heaven?
No, I'm just helping you understand that, Allah's got somewhere. I'm just giving you an understanding of what the Quran teaches about what's going to happen when you die. Would you have a problem with me reminding you what your doctrines are?
No, I don't. I just want to know where you're going with it. Like, because as far as I'm concerned, many people have believed many things. I mean, like the Vikings believed that Valhalla.
We're talking about Islam, not Vikings, though. So
humor me for a minute. They believed that heaven was a place where they can drink beer, fuck bitches, and kill each other for all eternity, because to them that was the greatest thing.
But they got that from Islam.
They got that from Islam?
Well, apart from the killing each other, but the fucking of the bitches and the drinking of beer, they certainly got that from the Quran, because you get rivers of wine in heaven with Allah.
Are you sure they got that from Muslims? Are you sure they got that from Muslims? I thought they were older.
Quran, mate. You need to read the Quran for a change.
No, I do read the
Quran.
Thunderous one. I do read the Quran, but I just want to know what's the point. I don't care about the details in heaven or the details in hell. Let's just focus on there's a heaven and there's a hell. What's the point you're trying to make?
The point I'm trying to make is that if Allah has prescribed when you're going to die, and we're talking about the situation where you're saying going to war and such, it doesn't really make a difference then from your point of view then, that if you're being assigned when you're going to die anyway, so what difference does it make? And I was asking you, do you believe that too? Because that's what we covered last week in the ayahs in the Quran, that Allah has destined a person to die, whether it's at a certain day and at a certain hour and a certain moment, that person's going to die. And do you agree with that? That no matter what a person does with his life, it doesn't matter whether he's lived a healthy life or a gluttonous life, life of danger and excitement, or a guy that's taken every precaution he can to live long, it doesn't matter, because that day and hour and that moment, he's going to die anyway. So irrelevant of what he's done with his life.
Okay, fair. Okay.
The point I'm trying to get is that, because if you believe that life is a test and that, then can you reconcile that with stillborns and abortions? And can you reconcile that when wars take place and a bomb is dropped, say at an Afghanistan wedding, and the whole family's wiped out? Of Muslims. I'm going along with what you're saying about the American army that bombed the whole wedding. Children were murdered, husbands were murdered, wives were murdered, mothers were murdered, the bride and the bridegroom were murdered as well. So how do you reconcile that with the doctrine of Islam, if life is just a test?
I feel like you bombarded me with questions. Look, I don't seek to reconcile anything. I mean, whatever I experience in my life, I accept it for what it is. People.
What about other people's life? When you see other people's lives torn apart, do you just look at it and think, well, that's just Allah's will, that's just their fate?
No, I don't think of it. No. I'm not that callous. Well, I mean, when I see that, I say, thank God I live in a country that, takes peace for granted. I mean, it makes me thankful, if anything, that it wasn't me, to be very honest with you. But I mean, would you also make that argument for when a lion, snatches a baby gazelle and eats it?
That process. Okay, if you're looking at it
I'm just saying, like, I mean.
Yeah, I'm answering. If you're looking at that from a religious point of view, then for those who believe in religion, when they see a lion taking a gazelle, they'll be thinking that's the process that God has put in place.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, it's not it's a process of life and death that's intermingled into one another. I mean,
no, Aziz, that's not the point. The point is, if a lion eats a gazelle in a world that is governed by naturalism and evolution, it makes perfect sense. If, however, your claim is that this world was designed by a loving God, then it does not make sense that an animal should suffer. This is the big, huge, fundamental difference. If it depends on what your claims are.
Okay, all right. You're saying essentially that an all-knowing, omnipotent, merciful God wouldn't create the world that we live in today.
No, can't.
Cannot. Because
Cannot.
It's impossible. Because the world that we have is based off random mutations and random atoms smashing into each other, creating gravitational pulls and billions of years of evolution, and voila, we're here.
You got it.
So that's basically the mindset that you approach your life with.
No, that is not a mindset. That is just accepting reality.
For you, that's fact. Fair enough. But I mean, it does not permeate through everything you experience. It's not lingering in the back of your head or anything of that nature.
No, of course not.
Sure. I was just curious to know. But the thing is, I mean, it's just this is just going on to so many things. We went from one verse about jihad to the evolution. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
All right, let's leave it there. We'll do one more verse, I think, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. I think
okay.
You've done your best there. All right, let's do this last verse and then we wrap it up, okay? 3:167, Sahih International. And that he might make evident those who are hypocrites, for it is said to them, come, fight in the way of Allah, or at least defend. They said, if we had known there would be fighting, we would have followed you. They were nearer to disbelief that day than to faith, saying with their mouths what was not in their hearts, and Allah is most knowing of what they conceal. Yusuf Ali. And the hypocrites also. These were told, come fight in the way of Allah, or at least drive the foe from your city. They said, had we known how to fight, we would certainly have followed you. They were that day nearer to unbelief than to faith, saying with their lips what was not in their hearts, but Allah has full knowledge of all they conceal. Anybody want to follow that one up?
I think goodness. Example of what we've read so many times before, another rinse and repeat of Muhammad trying to psychoanalyze the situation by trying to get people to get involved in the war rather than stay at home.
Yeah. And the next one too, we might as well add the next one because it's the same, much the same. I don't know why this is continuously being repeated.
All right, let's do 168 as well. Sahih International. Those who said about their brothers while sitting at home, if they had obeyed us, they would not have been killed. Say, then prevent death from yourselves. If you should be truthful. Yusuf Ali. They are the ones that say of their brethren slain, while they themselves sit at ease. If only they had listened to us, they would not have been slain. Say, avert death from your own selves if you speak the truth.
Yeah.
Anybody want to add anything there?
No.
All right. Stops, have you got a hadith? Aziz, I want to thank you for coming on.
Indeed, I have. I just
As
need
always,
to find it. Here we go. Okay, we were on funny things anyway. Okay. Narrated Abu Huraira, our favorite narrator. The Prophet said, when you hear the crowing of cocks, ask for Allah's blessings, for their crowing indicates that they have seen an angel. And when you hear the braying of a donkey, seek refuge with Allah from Satan, because the braying indicates that they have seen a Satan.
Do you agree with that, please? Is that something you would testify to?
Okay, that's not fair. Okay, I'll tell you why that's not fair. Because
I agree with you. How could anybody be so stupid?
Because Abu Huraira has a lot of hadith that are very, very, very questionable, to say the least. But that's not fair.
Okay,
that's not fair.
Yeah, but Aziz, it comes back to the same old question: do you accept the sahih, the grade, the sahih grading in the hadiths? Do you accept it, yes or no, or do you question every single one of them?
I mean, if you look at the methodology and how they developed the hadith grading, it seems like it's a good idea. But then what happened is that they plugged in a whole bunch of, hadiths that wouldn't, pass their methodology in the first place.
So how do you know? Yeah, but how do you know?
What do you mean? Like there's chains of narrations. There's commentary.
Okay, they're all graded sahih. They all say they passed the test, and now what?
But I'm saying, they wouldn't really pass the test if you tried to use the same criteria.
But they can, again,
no,
special pleading.
But the thing is, look, hadith is very look, hold up. Listen, hadith is very problematic. It's very, very, very problematic.
So why do you accept some of them?
No, hold up. It's probably easier if you guys have a mission to get Muslims to leave God. Just focus on hadith. No, I'm serious. Hadith is very problematic. It's probably more problematic than the Quran, and
obviously because of what the contents. But can I ask you, Aziz, before we finish, when you listen to your Scholars for Dollars on Peace TV, whoever, are there any scholars
I don't watch
that you subscribe to, like Zakir Naik?
No.
What about Yasser Qadi?
No, never heard of him.
What about you don't? Okay, fine, fair enough.
No, I tend to read classicals, obscure sources about many things. But when it comes to listening
to Ibn Taymiyyah now.
No, well, I have read Ibn Taymiyyah, but I don't necessarily follow him. But no, I don't read. I don't read too much into Ibn Taymiyyah because I don't agree with a lot of things he says. But the thing is, first of all, Ibn Taymiyyah is very obscure, and the only people that really know him are, I would say, Wahhabis. I have to be honest. I mean, Muslim Brotherhood loves them. I mean,
okay, but the point is, you are now saying that some of the hadiths, yes, you agree with them, and some you don't.
The thing is, I'm not the only one. A lot of Muslims in the world.
That's not the point. I'm asking why. Why is it, and on what basis do you accept one and not the other?
Because it goes against, like, there's a lot of hadith that go against Islamic principles.
So you are the judge of what a hadith is supposed to be taken as and what not.
Am I the judge? Personally, solely? I don't think so. I am the sole judge where people should follow me specifically. No, I think I can read and I can understand And when something is extremely unacceptable, yes, I mean, there's room.
Have you heard of a cafeteria Christian?
A cafeteria Christian? No, I've never heard of it. You enlighten me.
Okay, that's somebody who takes the menu and says, okay, I accept this, I take this, I reject this, I will not have this, I'll have this. This is what you're doing at the moment.
No,
you're looking at the menu and you're saying, I'll have one of these, this sentence I'll take, this one I don't. So you are creating your own version of Islam. That's what you're doing.
No. Because why? Why do I say no? Why do I say no? I'll tell you why I say no. Because if I'm a cafeteria Muslim, if you would like to call me that, then every single sect in Islam is a cafeteria Muslim. Because
correct. Yeah, well, you got it. Exactly.
But here's the
That's
thing.
why there are only two real Muslims, the one I'm talking to and Muhammad. Those are the only two Muslims ever in the planet.
I didn't say that. There are many.
Well, I'm saying it.
You're saying it from your experience, but there are
exactly.
Many Muslims. But you got to understand, Muslims don't disagree necessarily on the Quran a whole bunch, but they do disagree a lot on Hadith. And that's not a coincidence. And that goes back to what I was trying to say earlier, is that, there's a concerted effort to monopolize Islam, and that's solely done through Hadith, because no one can.
Yeah, but everybody's doing it. This is the problem, and therefore you've only got one.
But that's
okay. It doesn't matter. Okay.
We only got one. We only got one Quran, but there are many Hadiths, and different sects have different narrations, and different. Even schools of thought have different narrations. But the thing is, Hadith just because Hadith has problems in it doesn't necessarily mean we have to disregard them.
Okay. Guys, but what I would like to know, let me just ask a question before we end here. Should we continue just sort of going through, or are side discussions like this helpful? Is it nice to have different opinions? Is it nice to talk about topics, or should we just continue on plowing through the Quran? Let us know what you think. Because for me, it's a welcome, distraction, because I've read the Quran, so there's nothing new there. So I actually enjoy having somebody here and just to talk about these issues and talk about all these things and to hear different opinions. But, let us know what you think about this.
Oh, for next week? I don't know if I can come for next week, but it was enjoyable.
No, next week we're going to have Faye. Next week we're going to have somebody else here to give us their opinion. So next week it's going to be very, very little Quran.
Okay, I don't know, but I did enjoy talking to you guys. You guys are good guys, but I think you guys don't use the spiritual part of your brain.
I've got a. Aziz, I'll finish on this. This word spiritual, I have a big problem with. I can replace the word spiritual with the word woo. Spiritual doesn't tell you anything specific. I can have a spiritual experience on the toilet. I can have a spiritual experience looking up at the stars. Spiritual is just a word that's thrown out by people as if it means something, but nobody can define it. And if we replace the word spiritual with the word woo, we get just as much meaning, which is nothing at all. If it can be used in any context, it has no meaning. So let's finish on that. You could always come back and challenge me on that if you like. But I want to thank you for joining us. Let's save that for a couple of weeks.
Can I thank Aziz as well? This is Thunderous here, and Aziz, I enjoyed talking to you as well this evening. And to be honest with you, there are one or two points that you've made in the conversation that I actually totally agree with. So I thank you for bringing those points out, and hopefully we'll speak again another time. I look forward to it.
Okay, no problem. Have a wonderful evening. It was thank you for inviting me, and hopefully next week I can join you. If not, then again, say la vie.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, and as always, thank you to my co-hosts, and we'll see you again next Friday. I may or may not be on, but certainly Stops, I think, will be hosting that one with this ex-Muslim lady, so that'll be an interesting chat with her. So until then, Friday, 8 p.m. next time, good night to everybody.
Good night.
See you guys. Cheers. Bye.